On episode 292 of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we discuss eating healthy on the road. You can find the full show notes for this episode at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/292.
Have you decided you're ready to make a change? To reclaim your health and fitness? The 40 Plus Fitness Podcast is here for you. I'm your host, Alan Meisner. I'm an NSAM certified personal trainer with a specialization in corrective exercise and fitness nutrition. Let me be your coach as you find your way on your health and fitness journey. All right, let's go.
Hello, and thank you for being a part of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast. This is probably going to be a little bit of a short episode. I've been going through some personal changes. I know I've been a little cryptic on that, and I'm finally at a point where I can actually start talking about it. The company I work for, my day job, if you will, actually is going through a reorganization, and I am getting laid off. It's something that I kind of knew was in the works for the last few months, and so it's really affected my stress level. So you'll probably notice I've had a few additional episodes around stress because that's been forefront in my mind as I kind of deal with the change that's going on in my life. And, so I've had some people on about stress. I'm going to continue to have people on to talk about stress because I do think that's probably one of the most critical health issues. And I actually was reading a book today and will be interviewing a guy in a couple days. Looking forward to getting that episode to you. But that's really what my main stressor has been for the last couple months, is knowing that I'm going to go through this layoff and trying to figure out what I want to do and how I want to move forward with that, because it does mean a significant amount of change in my life. And one of the things that I'm really strongly considering, and the way this will work, is if I get the clients I need, then I'll do it. But I'm going to go ahead and open up my personal training and try to do it full time. And so what that means is I'm going to launch two different versions of my personal training. I've only so far really been working one-on-one with folks. And I've had other people come up to me and say they really want to work with me. They don't necessarily need the full service, and they can't necessarily afford the full service with me, but they wanted to work with me a little bit. So I am offering kind of a trimmed down group training version of what I do for folks one-on-one. You won't get as much access to me, but you will get pretty much a lot of the same programming, a lot of the same things that I do with my clients, just albeit at a slightly lower rate that kind of makes it a little bit more affordable to more people. So I'm going to be launching that. You can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/training. And I've done a little bit of write-up there to kind of talk about my journey and where I want to go with this personal training. And, you can see what's involved in both of them there. Obviously, if you have any questions, you can always email me at 40plusfitnesspodcast@gmail.com. And I'll be glad to discuss whatever you want to know about the programming. And how I go about online training. It's kind of a unique thing. It's kind of an up and coming thing. I did recently get certified to do online personal training, so I kind of understand how it all works, and I can work directly with you via email and phone and Skype and all the tools that are out there. Sometimes the technology is not so much fun, but I try to make it as easy as possible as far as the technology front goes. I'm very hands-on. So I've got clients that have worked with me. They get great results. So I know I can do this. I know I can be successful with you. So if you're interested in getting started and getting something done, because having someone there in your corner, having a trainer, is definitely going to give you an acceleration on your benefits. It's going to help you lose the weight you want to lose. It's going to help you gain the muscle. It's going to help you get to a point that you want to be. Then definitely come on, look me up. Go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/training. And you'll see about the personal training there. So to get into the episode today, I wanted to talk about healthy eating on the road, primarily because around the Christmas time, around Thanksgiving, it's a time when a lot of us are traveling to go see family. I tend to do my traveling around Thanksgiving, but I do know a lot of people will travel around the Christmas time, around New Year's, to go see family. And the travel really does disrupt your routine. And so while I'm writing this time of the year, just realize that what I'm going to say today is applicable whether you're taking a business trip, whether it's a summer vacation, whether it's a spring break. Any time that you're on the road, keeping up with your diet, keeping up with your food, it can be very, very difficult because you won't have the same routine, you won't have the same access. So it takes a little bit of work and a little bit of planning. And what I want to kind of get into today are some basic strategies and some thought processes for you to go through when you know you're about to go out of town and you really don't want to blow your diet. You want to kind of stay on your eating plan, particularly if you've taken all this time to get yourself into ketosis or something like that. You really don't want to blow it for a week and then have to go through the process of getting yourself back into ketosis later. But even if you're not into ketosis, gaining a couple pounds while you're traveling isn't any fun and doesn't feel very good when you get back. So let's talk a little bit about travel and how you could be eating healthy on the road. Now, the first thing that you should consider is how are you going to get where you want to get? Most of us like to drive. I love driving. In fact, my truck is a 2010 and I've got over 250,000 miles on it. And that's because I drive. If it's anywhere less than 8 hours to drive there, I'm going to drive rather than fly because I just hate sitting in an airport, getting on an airplane, getting exposed to who knows what. I get sick a lot when I'm on airplanes a lot, so I try to avoid them as much as possible. So I will drive a lot. And when you're going to drive versus flying, you do have a little bit more flexibility, and that flexibility is that you can actually pack food and carry it in your vehicle with you. I have a little cooler, and I'll talk about how I pack my cooler for a day's travel or day's lunch or a day at work, how I like to do that to make sure that I have healthy food on hand to get me through the day or get me through the trip. I'll talk about that in a minute, but taking the time to get a little cooler. I have a little cooler pack. I have a couple of them actually, several of them actually. My wife gets a little upset with me in my bag fetish, where I buy a lot of these things because they're cool, they're the right size. I have lots of different sizes for different purposes, but I'll take one of those and then I'll pick out the foods that I want to carry with me that are going to keep me on my eating plan for the day. And then I'll put one of those little cooler gel things in there, and that'll keep all day long. Also, if I'm traveling and I have, maybe I want to bring some bone broth with me, I'll often freeze the bone broth ahead of time, and then it'll thaw. And I'll talk in a minute about how I could prepare that later. But I do carry the food with me, so I do a little bit of research on understanding when I'm driving, where I could stop or what food I can carry, and I have that ready. Now, another thing that I'll often do when I'm flying is I'll do a little bit of research about potentially some restaurants that would be at stop points. So, like when I drove to see my mother for Thanksgiving, that was nearly a 12-hour drive. So about midway through the trip, I found a spot that was serving wild game. And so it was kind of an interesting restaurant for my wife and I to go into in a place that we weren't that familiar with. So it was kind of a great way to kind of break up the trip and actually have a sit-down meal, get out of the car and stretch a little bit and get comfortable and have a nice meal. And it was really generally good, healthy food and I was really surprised that the portions were just right. They didn't over portion you like a lot of restaurants do. The portion sizes were actually perfect. And so doing a little bit of research ahead of time, looking at the menus, understanding what restaurants might be along the way, particularly those that you like. Whole Foods often serves some warm dishes, so that's another option. But doing some research like that so you kind of understand where things are and what you can do, and then packing what you need to make it through the trip. I think those are two really important strategies for you to consider. Now, if you're flying, the advantage of flying is obviously you get there a bit faster. But the airports are just full of fast food restaurants and whatnot. But more and more, I'm finding that the restaurants are beginning to serve even better healthy foods, better healthy choices. So you can take the time to make sure and do some research on your connecting flights if you're going to have a layover. What foods might be available to you there. But always, you can pack things. You can't take the gel packs. But there are foods that you can pack easily and carry on with you. I wouldn't eat them on a plane because that'll pretty much upset anybody else on the plane if the food smells. I'm a big fan of sardines, and if you actually go to the show notes for this episode at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/292, I put a little video of how I would pack for a day or pack for lunch. And sardines are typically a part of what I would include in my daily lunch pack. But I wouldn't obviously eat those on an airplane or anywhere around anybody. But that's just something to consider, is to kind of plan out how you're going to make this trip. Now, the second aspect of consideration beyond how you're going to get there is where you're going to stay. If I'm going to stay in a hotel, which is what I do most of the time when I'm traveling, I'm going to look for one that has a kitchenette and a refrigerator. So the refrigerator allows me to store foods, and the kitchenette allows me to prepare those foods. So if I want to have eggs and bacon, I can easily have eggs and bacon for breakfast. If I want to have a healthy dinner, I can buy the foods when I'm there on the way, stop by a grocery store, store them in the refrigerator, and then I've got the full kitchenette there that allows me to prepare the meals. So again, that takes a little bit of research to understand which hotels that you would enjoy or they're close to the location you want to stay are going to give you what you need to prepare the healthy foods. Just having a refrigerator is a huge advantage, but it's even better when you have the kitchenette and can do the whole deal there. Now, if you're staying with family, a couple things might come about. Obviously they're going to have their eating styles and whatnot, and that might be quite disruptive to what you would normally eat. But take this time and actually volunteer to cook a meal. Go by a grocery store before you get there and stop and actually prepare at least one or two of the meals while you're there. At least then you know what's in that food. You can prepare a healthy meal that you know they're also going to enjoy. And again, expose them a little bit to what you're doing. Be the example. But it also gives you that opportunity. That might not be the easiest thing to do because your family might not be that interested. There might be a lot more eating out and things of that nature. But to the extent possible, try to be a part of that equation. Try to be not be aggressive exactly, but just kind of be a part of it and say, this is what I'm trying to do. This is where I am. And so, be a voice in selecting which restaurants you go to. Be a voice in selecting what foods are prepared for the meals. And don't be afraid to run by the grocery store and say, hey, Mom, I'm going to put a little bit of food in your refrigerator here so we can stock up and have some things that I would enjoy and some healthy snacks for me. So we've decided, okay, one, we want to know how we're going to get there. And then two, we want to know where we're going to stay. And so with those two things, knowing those, then we can kind of sit back and do some planning, some strategy, some research to kind of understand how we want to go about doing this. In most cases, it's still going to involve carrying some food with you. And as I mentioned earlier, on the show notes at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/292, I did take the time to post a video there where I'm basically showing you how I pack a healthy meals for the day. It includes things like boiled eggs, of course for me, fish, some salad. I make a salad dressing in the morning. I put it in little jars. All the little things that I do to kind of prepare a pack that I can then take to work. They have a refrigerator in the break room, and then I can basically have that during the day. Now, obviously, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, that's not going to be the case anymore. I will be at home. That's going to make my routine a lot easier, particularly if I can do the online training and that works out. I'll be at home and I'll be available. The food I have will be there. I probably won't be traveling nearly as much as I was. And again, that's going to help my routine. But there's going to be those times when I'm traveling. And so I'm going to make sure each time I travel that I understand the nature of how I'm going to get there and where I'm going to stay. And I use that information to build a plan. And by having a plan, then you're going to be much more closer to success. All that said, realize when you're traveling, particularly to see family and friends, particularly for vacation and whatnot, it's important to not stress out about having to eat a certain way all the time. A lot of people will stress the 80-20 rule. I'm not a big fan of that because it just kind of says on a regular basis you can let go. And I'd say for most people that doesn't really work. You're either going to be an all-on or an all-off type person. But taking a week every once in a while and just breaking the cycle and going out and doing a little bit is not really going to kill you. It might actually make life a little bit more enjoyable, make you a little bit easier to get along with, and just enjoy yourself. I mean, a big part of the travel, a big part of the family, all of that's about enjoyment, and you shouldn't let that be a stress in your life. Because again, the stress is not going to help you. And we've talked a little bit about stress today. We'll bring on more people talking about stress, but don't be the one creating your own stress. Being prepared, planning, and executing on your plan is great. But every once in a while, if you're not able to do that, you're staying with friends, and there's an expectation, then by all means, go ahead and do what you want to do. Just do it in moderation, smaller batches, smaller bits. But to make it when you're traveling, have a plan and execute. We're coming up to that time of the year when people really start getting focused on their health and fitness. Are you? If you are, and you think you might need just a little bit of help to get that special edge, so this year is different than last year, go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/training. There you can learn what I do with 40 Plus Fitness Podcast personal training. It's an online program, it's very affordable, and it's something that really will help you get to the next level. Go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/training to learn more. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we meet blind Ironman Diane Bergeron. Until then, have a happy and healthy day.